Hey folks, Steve here with another Red Strike video for you today. We're going to be looking at exercise scenario 7, Red October. Um, so, so you can kind of see the allusion to a particular book and movie. I think Tom Clancy, right? Hunt for Red October. If I'm remembering right, I could be wrong about that. Um, this scenario is going to involve naval units and air units, and all things considered, this is kind of a brand new thing here, right? If you look here on your screen, which you're watching, this is a very different looking map than what we've seen, and this is considered the strategic map or the strategy map. So this is a case where we are looking at the map in a much more zoomed out fashion, um, and portraying this sort of hypothetical Third World War at a more strategic Atlantic view level to handle some other game functions. In a campaign context, this would matter for like delivery of supply points and interdicting the supply paths over here of the Warsaw Pact, and just generally seeing kind of what is happening beyond the operational map that is really focused, over here in Germany principally. Um, but we do have actually a number of exercise scenarios that will use this strategic map. And, when you're looking at it, gosh, it almost feels like a whole additional game to be looking at, right? I mean, it's just a totally different scale. A lot of the same icons you might see, like ports and air bases and various things like that. Um, but we're dealing with a much different looking picture here. So yeah, you can imagine. I think one of the more popular games that has come out in the last couple of years was like Atlantic Chase, where you're looking at a map that looks not too dissimilar to this. If you're looking at World War II, there's Battle of the Atlantic games that do kind of show this level of operations, and so too does Red Strike in this hypothetical World War III kind of situation. And so we're going to be playing, I think, this scenario and at least the next scenario on this map. Now, this is on a paper map, or I don't know, it feels a little bit nicer than paper, but I don't know what the material actually is. It is a nice map, I will say that much. It does have a lot of creases from being folded up. Decided not to put plexi over it for this, but I did leave plexi laying on top of it overnight to help flatten it out a little bit, and I think we're going to work just fine. Um, so just to get some of the like particular rules bits out of the way as it relates to the strategic map. If you think about the hex sizes on the operational map compared to this, if one hex on the op map would take like one movement point, moving one strategic hex here on the strategic map, the strat map, strat hexes, you can move one strategic level hex for 10 movement points of your naval and air units. So we're going to be working in sets of 10 basically to maneuver. This zoomed out perspective applies to all the other rules that we're already kind of used to using. Now, ground units really never operate on the strategic map. This is really air and naval. Um, but for instance, like an aircraft carrier that's flying cap out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is only going to be, really that cap exists on the hex on that one big hex, and it operates within that hex. U.S. aircraft carriers can technically deploy cap out to, I think it's at least one strategic hex around it. So we're dealing with very different dimensions of range here. And this actually lines up with our missile tables where I'm going to just try to get an example on here. You're going to find that for a lot of our warhead equipment packages that we've been dealing really with these columns that are, op hexes. So op hex is out to 4 or 5 or what have you, not usually talking about much more than that. You can see this aligns with a strategic hex range here, looking and seeing like, okay, well, you know, uh, if the range only goes out to 5, that's out to the equivalent of being in the same strategic hex, being stacked up in a big strategic hex. And being one strategic hex away is the equivalent of being out to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hexes away. And this is why you say you want to move from one hex to the next hex with moving. You need to spend 10 movement points to kind of get all the way into that next hex, strategic level hex. So that's the kind of like modulation we need to have here. We have to, kind of change our perspective as we're going to go around and operate in this given scenario and any time that we're actually operating on the strategic map. And again, if you think back to any of the other scenarios we played, and really only a couple of the exercise maps show parts of the real Red Strike map. Like all that naval stuff we were doing in the one of the previous scenarios, like that's all happening within basically these three, four strategic hexes. Right in here is where all this was happening. Really, these three. So when you think about like that level of zoomed out, we're really covering a lot of other stuff. Now, it will be interesting. I know that Red Strike's sibling game that will come out is Northern Strike, and that's going to be around Scandinavia and the countries there. I suspect they would leverage the same strategic map. We'll see what happens there. Maybe they'll issue a revised strategic map that might need to be slightly modified for some reason. Who knows? Um, but this does give us a bigger perspective. We're basically seeing, uh, a big chunk of Eastern Europe. We're seeing Western Europe there. We're seeing Scandinavia. We're seeing the British Isles, Iceland, Greenland, and then bits and pieces of Canada, with the U.S. being off map. It's actually represented by a holding box right there, and technically there's some other holding boxes over here for the east and actually other locations as well. So there's a lot of holding boxes to show things that are not quite on the map, and then obviously we have a lot of space to work with on the map. So for this scenario, again, largely going to be, I'm going to adjust the camera view here so we can talk a little bit about the units we're going to be dealing with. It's all naval and air, so we have across the NATO forces both submarines, surface ships, even helicopters, and some air that we will place on the map based on their air base and naval base locations. The Warsaw Pact has a number of subs and a few air units, basically. So there's no surface ships to be dealing with here on the Warsaw Pact side. This is purely subs and aircraft, supporting aircraft. Um, we're going to start, each side is going to start with some air recon points. So they're going to be able to do some reconnaissance, reconnoitering, which will prove valuable to help any bombardments we're going to use in our air operations, air naval operations. The Warsaw Pact starts with 20 supply. The NATO forces start with 25 supply. And when you figure, we've got a fair number of units on the board across 4 turns, we are going to have to be careful on how we use that supply and do so judiciously. Maybe we have enough to do a lot of stuff, but still, knowing we're not going to get much more supply is a big factor. And then in terms of the actual victory conditions, so for this one, our requirement is that we need to position at least one SSBN unit as the Warsaw Pact inside Westland Naval Zone at the end of a game turn. So at least one SSBN. And in terms of the units we actually have to do that with, we only have 2. So we have a couple of SSGNs, we have some SSNs, we only have 2 SSBNs. So those are our key units. And in terms of where they need to get to, again, if you've seen the Red October movie and what they were trying to do there, I don't know that we're going to imagine that one of these subs is actually trying to defect, but Westland is all the way over here. So when you look at the map and where these guys are probably going to start, and if I look at, what hexes are these guys operating out of, our subs are operating out of O24, which um, it's up here in. Oop, you can't see it. Let me adjust the camera here. These guys are going to end up starting, if I'm reading the map right, up here in Murmansk. And we're going to need to eventually send them all the way over and get them all the way to the Westland zone. So getting into this hex, or one of the hexes along here, is really what we're looking for, in the hope that they don't get intercepted, destroyed, or disrupted by NATO defenses. Which, I mean, that's going to be the whole scenario here. So we're going to be worried less about the stuff down here, and just in terms of like Warsaw Pact units operating. We are going to be trying to go through, this, very northern sea area, and try to get all the way over here. That is our goal. There's a little bit of scenario errata for this. It's very minor. It's the um, one of the Warsaw Pact planes starts in a different air base. So when I show the setup, it's going to be different than the setup chart. For that reason, it is errata to the setup chart. That is in the living scenario book. So if you have a living scenario book PDF, you're good to go. Just check that, you'll see it, and we'll put these guys on the map where they're supposed to go, and we'll look at the operation. So this is, I think, very much going to be a game of hide and seek, where we're going to use the Warsaw Pact units, everybody but our SSBNs, and leverage our air, to clear the way, or at least maybe damage the NATO forces enough that we've thinned out the defenses of the North Sea region here in the North Atlantic, and scoot our subs secretly down there. Now, you figure the detection capabilities against subs are going to be the worst out of all the potential options. So to sneak those guys all the way down there, like, that feels doable, but we're going to have to watch out for all these units' different capabilities, and what they're going to be able to achieve. Like every scenario up to this point, we're going to need to really examine, um, each side is going to have to examine its available units, their capabilities, and how to operate. We're going to be constrained by our naval movement die rolls, just like we did in the Baltop scenario. So it could be, we're going to be forced into some tough decisions of like, well, we only get one or two moves left in the turn. Do we send one of our SSBN units all the way down and try to make the run for it? Now, just to talk about, distance here, um, our fastest moving SSBN is this guy, who's got a movement allowance of 70. So if you want to understand our rate of advance here, say we're going to leave here. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's one move. That's one turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's just say that's another. So that's turn at the end of turn 2, ideally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the end of turn 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So out of our 4 turns, the only way that we're going to win as the Warsaw Pact is, I mean, we're going to have to move our two, at least one, but ideally both of those submarines every turn, to make the distance that we're going to need to get into West Atlantic Sea Zone area. So we can't hold them back in reserve. Maybe we wait until the last action stage of a turn to move those subs, but we can't afford not to move them every turn, which means they can't hide in port and just hang out and wait for clear ocean. We need to be moving them, and we need to be defending, their perimeter, I guess, or running block for them during all 4 turns effectively, is what that seems like I'm going to need to be able to do. The other, I should point out, I showed that sub with 70 movement. There is the other SSBN only has 60. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Uh-oh, we're going to have trouble. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We might not be able to get, depending on what route we take, we're going to have to be very careful. Like this guy, to make it, might have to be very close to NATO territory. Yeah, I don't know. I maybe can't get that guy all the way down there. Trying to count it out. 60 movement points. Could be I'm missing something else in terms of where these guys can go. But that is going to be a trick for us of how quickly we can get down. So that worries me a little bit. I'll have to double check if there's something else I'm missing there. It could be that our 70 movement sub is the only one that's even capable of getting all the way down there, right? Because each unit can only move in a game turn once. So I don't know. Maybe there's a shell game we're going to have to play, which doesn't work as well for solitaire, but gets us something. Where's the sub that can actually make it, uh, and we can make that work, I guess. So here's a look at the map now with our units placed. A couple of things. I've not put the undetected markers on the naval units. We need to do that before we start playing. But this is just to get a good look at like what is the actual position of the units that are included in this scenario. And so the other thing is I have the air units actually placed on the air bases. Technically, they need to be on the airbase displays, which are player aids that come with the game. And because they're a little distributed here, right? We've got some air bases in the UK, we have some air bases in Norway and such. I've had to set those guys up back there on another part of my table setup here, um, where those units are going to reside, and we'll show. You can see there's a lot there. So if you imagine this were a campaign game, having a setup, you need a pretty decent amount of table space just to show the airbase displays across all of these things. So again, if you're going to play the campaign, it's going to be a monster in terms of table space. So I will eventually move the air units over to those base displays so we can keep track of their sorties across the game turn and all that good stuff. But this is just to get a good look. So what I found really interesting is that the Warsaw Pact actually starts with some subs already over in the Western Atlantic Sea Zone area. But these are not the ones that give us victory. So they are SSGN and an SSN, different subs that are over here. What we can use those guys for is to run interdiction on these other NATO units and try to disrupt, because for NATO on the furthest extent out here, there is a NATO sub here, kind of smack dab in the middle. Over in the glare land, it's a little harder to see. There's a Ticonderoga surface action group down here. There's another sub right here, just at the edge of the map. So these guys could run interference against those NATO forces if we can actually detect them and operate. We do have some cruise missile capability that I think we could be using. I'll have to double check the types. But that gives us at least something to operate with. In terms of anti-sub, these guys are actually pretty good, and anti-ship is actually really good for the one unit, and not quite as good, but not bad either. So these guys are actually going to probably be very useful. If I slide the view over to the east a bit more, NATO has both a surface action anti-submarine warfare unit here that's based out of basically southern England, as well as this air unit MR2 that can operate also out of southern England. There is a sub operating out of say Northern Ireland, I guess we'll say. And then we have another air unit that's coming out of Kinloss Air Base, another MR2. So we have the ability to project air, kind of all through here, basically. And in terms of their range, I mean, they have enough range to go anywhere and everywhere. We're talking 321 movement allowance. So, I mean, that's 32 hexes that they can operate in. That's quite enough to do some roundabout flying in this area. And again, this sub, potentially a good unit. And then finally over here, operating out of Bergen is a Norwegian surface action group. So that's another sort of, what are the different layers or areas that we're going to have to surpass. Right here is a lot of NATO capability, a lot of NATO air bases and such detection capability all throughout this region. Then really the initial hurdle that we're going to have to get over is up here in northern Norway, where we have a sub that can operate out of this hex, which is really at first I thought I wasn't sure that you could actually put a naval unit there, but I think you can. And then you have a helicopter unit here operating out of Bardufoss Air Base, and then out of Andoya Air Base, we have a P3C right here. So those are our immediate hurdles. So we have hurdle one, basically hurdle two, and then kind of the remnant of what's operating over here is hurdle three to get past. And again, we have some subs that are way out there in the Western Atlantic that we can leverage. Now, for what we have besides those Warsaw Pact subs way out west, we have some airplanes that are going to operate out of the Northern Fleet Air Base. And they've got plenty of range, so we could use them to do a couple different things. We've also got another air unit operating out of the Severomorsk Air Base. This is the errata unit that's not in Peshang. And then the rest of our units are all these subs, two of which are our SSBN units that we would need to get across the barrier there into the Western Atlantic. So that's kind of the shakeup here in terms of what we have. I think air is going to be important. I mean, it would be really nice if we were able to clear some of the NATO air. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. And, so again, just looking at the actual map situation, it is what it is. I need now, and if you're following along at home, I would recommend the same, taking a look at the map, understanding the way that the map works, setting up the units so you can see where is what before you put the undetected markers on and before you put the air units on their displays. I might not even put them on the displays until I've run them at least one sortie. So I can remember, like, yes, don't forget about that guy when I'm standing on the other side of the table. I do now need to, and this is what I recommend for you, looking at your units as both sides potentially and figuring out what they can do and how you're going to achieve your ultimate victory objectives. So again, we just need to get a sub to move someplace. If that unit is continuously intercepted, then they're not going to meet their metric. They basically need to be able to move without being intercepted their full movement allowance every turn to get over there. If I'm reading this right, I'm gonna have to double check a couple of things related to this, but I do think we're gonna have to basically progress as much as we possibly can every turn. That means not being intercepted, which means not being detected if we can help it. It's harder to detect our subs, but we definitely don't want to be intercepted. As soon as we get detected, it's very likely that we're going to be intercepted. So I think that kind of incentivizes me to use my air and non-critical subs as much as possible in the early parts of each turn to clear the defenders such that we can try to get that sub as far as possible. So I'll probably do a couple of cycles of counting hexes and paths to go, okay, well, if I went around Iceland, go do 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 do, is that better because I am, out of range potentially of some of the detection capabilities of NATO? That's the kind of thing you need to start thinking about even before the start of play. Just understanding what can you achieve is going to be really important. So I'm going to do that. The unit assignment phase is going to be, straightforward, I think. But when you see the next part of this video as we swap clips here, you should see me having performed the unit assignment phase and basically be able to start operating, likely with our Warsaw Pact Air to start and see where we can get to. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try to get started here. I've more or less set up everything in terms of unit assignment. everyone's expecting to have to do some movement, some various things. Um, and per uh, our movement requirements, we're going to have to determine um, as we move into the first action stage how many naval moves each side is going to get. So we'll simply roll for that. And all things considered, both sides would like to roll high if they could. Um, so let's see what we got. Okay, so Warsaw Pact gets 5 moves, and let's see. Five moves, the NATO forces get 4 naval moves. So at least for our first run of it, we get that set up. 5, 4, 5. So rolling the d10 and having it, which that's going to be enough to move plenty of things around. Now, this is just the first action stage, mind you. So, we could hold back some units and all that just to see. Now, I want to think about a couple of things in terms of what can we do. Um, we have, as the Warsaw Pact, some air units, which I don't have fully covered up as undetected over there, but they're undetected over here. One of the things that I should do with those guys, they're really good at subsurface combat, is I want to use them as sub hunters. Now, technically, these guys are undetected, but due to the scenario setup, I know there's a sub here, NATO sub. There's a NATO sub here. There's some stuff. Oh, no, that's surface vessel. That's a sub. That's a surface, and I think there's one more sub up there. So there's a few submarine units on the NATO side. And as the Warsaw Pact, if my air is only good at attacking subs, and in this scenario, I'm very reasonably confident that they're only good at fighting subs, subsurface, subsurface, subsurface. We have these planes here. They're really good at the sub stuff, attacking subs. 5, 5. That's pretty good. Um, there's not much else for me to do with them in this scenario. So as I'm looking at that, like that is my chief objective. What can I do with these planes? And I might as well deploy them just about every opportunity that I can sortie them, I should, because I can fly them pretty reasonably through here. Now I'm a little uncertain. It seems like I could fly over Norway here. Now you would think I would get detected, so I'm not sure how I want to deal with that because there is an air defense station here, as well as let's see over here in a couple places. So it's a real kind of confusing bit here. Can I thread a needle to where they don't get detected? And it is possible for our planes to go down here and basically avoid any detecting forces. If I trace that wacky line, I can get out here. I'd have to make a detection check as I pass through this air defense line, but if I can get past it, then those planes could either target these guys, which is kind of what I'd like to do, or I could try to make strikes more locally at some of these other subunits that are kind of floating around. Those are all potential options, but I would like to try to eliminate them because these are the things that could try to intercept our sub that we need to get across the white line there. So I can't use the planes for much else. They're very obviously anti-sub. I should use that to try to clear, damage, destroy any enemy subs. That's all I can really do with those guys. And then the rest of my units, which are really, I mean, if I really look at it, we've got a couple subs over here, and then we've got what is this? 4 subs up here. What I could do, if I'm going to have 5 naval moves here, is I could wait for a later action stage to move my most important subs, and I could use the rest to try to kind of get, out here and disrupt NATO operations and any other units that I feel could stop. Um, I feel that could stop our most important sub. Our problem is, of course, that like the NATO forces could always hold something in reserve to stop them, and that's the puzzle that I can't quite figure out. Like, what can I do to ensure that my subs get to where they need to be? So, what I'm going to try to do here, because we've got plenty to cover here, and this is going to be a lot of like hex to hex counting. It's going to take too long to show everything, guys. I don't want to do that. That's going to make this take forever. I'm going to play through, and I'm going to try to get through the first action stage and kind of show the aftermath. So what we should see happen is potentially some detected units because my planes do need to go try to detect the subs, and then ideally try to harm them. Otherwise, we're out here. That guy should be undetected. So should that guy. Sorry, guys. I don't have everything set up the way I should. I guess up there undetected as well. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to try to see what I can do. Again, I need to try to use my planes to their most effective way possible to hurt subs, and then I need to use maybe my subs out here to further disrupt and damage any of the NATO forces that could respond to our attack. Because ideally, we do not want our subs to be detected. That's like the chief thing. As soon as they become detected, we begin to get in trouble because then NATO can concentrate its forces on trying to disrupt our nuclear subs. So we'll play through. Remember, 5 naval movements for Warsaw Pact, 4 for NATO, and then each side has access to air units. Um, and to be honest, if I just like this helicopter, I should point this out, can really only operate like right here. So once we get past the helicopter, they're kind of done. This naval unit, this P3C, is good at a variety of things and is actually good at anti-ship in addition to subsurface. So this guy's actually um, hyper dangerous. So that's going to be one big problem for us. Um, what other air do we have to worry about here? This guy, he's pretty gnarly too. He's got sevens. Um, sevens. So I think our biggest, I mean, the surface vessels are one thing. I think our greatest problem is that there's enough NATO air on station here. We're going to have a hell of a time if our subs get spotted. They could very well get hurt pretty badly. So it's all going to be about the hide and seek here. I could almost see a shell game where, because you as the Warsaw Pact player have a number of different subs, like you could be faking out the NATO, like which one is the one with nuclear capability. Problem is, I'm playing solitaire, which means I can't really have that level of shell game here. I'm gonna just have to, do it. One of the other things I could try to do maybe is some funky die rolling to determine like which unit is under a given undetected marker, but that feels like overkill here for a learning scenario. So I'll show the aftermath of the first action stage of turn 1, and we'll keep rolling from there. Okay, here we are after the end of the first action stage of turn 1. Already, it's kind of a momentous, set of activities. I think some of this is because the players, I mean, honestly, the players know a unit is somewhere, even if it's undetected. So you just hope that you can send your unit over there and detect, and if you're successful, then great. It's not as though I'm randomly trying to detect all these hexes over here. So I think even with the shell game, there's only so many things to do. There's already been several losses. So let's talk about the west side here for a second. The 2 Warsaw Pact subs that were over here beelined it down to this hex where there was a Ticonderoga surface action group, which looks plenty beefy and is pretty cool and all that good stuff. Well, as it happens, their sub capability is not the best, and the two Warsaw Pact subs, both undetected, got some good shots off and totally annihilated that naval unit. And the counterattacks didn't really go the NATO faction's way because of the reduced capability after suffering 3 hits, and then the second sub went in and finished it off. That left 2 here. Eventually, when the NATO player got their reaction to do their moves in this action stage, they sent their sub here and actually destroyed one of the Warsaw Pact subs that was involved in that combat, and this guy is dead. And they rolled fantastically, so I should point out. So it was a kind of a surprising outcome, all told, where we did the 3 hits all in one roll because NATO rolled a 1, and this subsurface combat value is a 7. So we just straight out of the gate were doing 3 hits. The Soviet sub missed its ECM and was destroyed. So we're already kind of dishing out plenty of damage. Um, Things getting underway. Already pretty nasty stuff. Now we also had, returning us up here, you can see some NATO units have kind of deployed out into the Atlantic, the North Sea regions, just sort of preparing to be intercepting as these guys go. We did use one um, Warsaw Pact air unit to fly over here, and we actually got lucky and detected a sub because these are marine detection planes, and destroyed this guy right here, doing 2 hits, failed ECM, destroyed it. So we managed to get rid of one NATO sub. So two units lost on the NATO side, 1 unit lost on the Warsaw Pact side already. And you can kind of see I'm doing a weird thing. I don't want to keep running back and forth between my airport marker or airport airbase displays. So I'm doing a little bit of a different thing. If they've used a sortie, I'm twisting them 90 degrees, and they'll keep twisting for each sortie until they used all their sorties. So we have some NATO planes here that have gone, so I've rotated them like that for the moment. They spent a lot of time flying up here because, indeed, the Warsaw Pact sent their subs out and were coming across. And I tried to, play a little bit of a shell game here. Funnily enough, the one sub that's undetected up here is actually our one sub that can legally win the game. So I decided to, I can't trick myself, but for fun, I said, well, why don't we leave one sub behind and we'll send out the important sub and have it confused with this guy and just see what happens. So this sub back here, who hasn't left port, that can, probably would do so in the second action stage, doesn't actually have the capability to win the game. So he's just sort of additive. Now I sent them up, the NATO player and their reaction part of the reaction segment of this first action stage, sent their planes up here and only managed to detect these guys. And for all their effort, they've managed to do 1 step loss to one of these guys. So actually need to stick him back like that. So we had some planes that did that. They're back home at their air base waiting for the second action stage. We still have some naval units that have not left port on the NATO side, but they're not very good. I also tried. I don't know if this is legal in this scenario, but I'm just trying to play things out. I actually used the other planes here of Warsaw Pact. I flew them down to this air base, the Baltic Fleet air base, spending a sortie to rebase effectively, because I don't know that they were going to do any good back here. The reason is the range of these guys. Now, what's that? 304. That seems pretty good. 462. That's also pretty good. But when you realize each hex is 10 movement points, that's really 46 hexes of movement, and you have to use kind of half their range flying home. So when you work out all the math, it's really like, well, you can get out to 20 some hexes. In some cases, that's far enough to maybe do what you need, but in our case, it wasn't actually near enough to get, at least at the time this sub wasn't there, couldn't actually get out to stop any of the NATO subs. So the idea was to try to maybe reposition so we could try to fly through this way. I don't know if that's a good move. I don't even know if I can do that in this scenario. It's really kind of unclear. This guy did his damage, destroyed that sub. These guys relocated with the idea that we could try to disrupt the rest of the Atlantic forces, North Sea forces of NATO, at least the subs, if we can find them. So right now, I mean, just in the given situation, like we have some of our subs already detected. That's a problem. I'm not sure it's going to get any better. And in fact, this could be a really short scenario if our one good sub gets discovered and destroyed. Well, we're going to be in trouble, and I'm not sure how else to deal with that. So that's all in the first action stage. So a lot of units have gone. All the naval units on the map have already gone and can't move again, basically, until the next turn, except for this guy and this guy, or I'm sorry, this guy and this guy. The planes can all sortie again, so that's fine. So there's still, I think the key thing is this sort of maritime patrol air units are going to be the key factors here. NATO can just send their planes up and try to find these guys. They've got pretty good range. Like they can just fly and find them and ideally destroy these subs before they can get to where they need to get to. And it just feels like the Warsaw Pact doesn't have enough units on the map to really make it, so to speak. Like they're really going to have challenges. I might play with a thing with the optional rule or the rule there where a sub that's not adjacent to any enemies can become undetected again. I think I should play with that because otherwise, it's going to be the turkey shoot here as these aircraft just hit hit these subs so hard. It's going to be a really short game. Now, I will say, and I'm gonna use this opportunity to talk longer between these action stages for a second. Already, in terms of a learning scenario, this is a very educational scenario. Even if I feel like right now the Warsaw Pact doesn't have a lot of great opportunities here, they're kind of limited in what they can do because it's teaching us things like the round up rule, like this helicopter can actually go out to basically a hex and back, one hex away on the strategic map. Wasn't super helpful here, but they could do that um, because they have 19 movement allowance, which you round up to two, uh, you know, strategic hexes of movement. So just something to know there. Um, and then seeing that like you can have a lot of range on your aircraft, but on the strategic map, like that, you're still limited in where you can go because this is obviously a huge amount of space in real life. Like this takes a lot of effort to be patrolling and running around these places. So the positions of the air defense networks, which kind of affect where our planes can go, the ability of the NATO planes to kind of really, because they control all of this territory, navigating the space is so much easier for NATO. And we're seeing the impact of these maritime patrol air units, which we haven't really had much use for yet. We sort of use them with the aircraft carrier scenario, but this one it really matters more because you need to detect those subs. So very educational in terms of figuring out what you need to be able to do and counting the movement factors and what's going to make sense and how to detect. The other thing I should mention is, by and large, detection. If you're using the standard rules, the advanced rules are a little bit different. You tend to have to be detecting in the same hex, so you have to move all the way into that hex and hope that you detect them. Um, there's not much in the way of range detection. There's a couple of exceptions to that with the air defense networks, which they're worse off one hex away. Um, And it's the distinction between, like, here's the standard game. You're going to see most of these detection ranges are functionally one strategic hex. But if you look at the advanced game detection, you're going to see a lot more in terms of like the type of unit or installation, uh, you know, and the range out to one strategic hex. You'll see there are some units that can do it. Um, some air can, uh, or I'm sorry, yeah, some air is capable of detecting naval units from one hex out. So this is kind of where, it's not sub granted, but you can start to see in the advanced game there is greater capability to detect out to at least, one um, one strategic hex. So just something to watch out for in this particular scenario. It's not a huge deal that I'm just doing the standard game, but it is something to notice the difference, and I could see where it'd be preferable to use the advanced rule here. Okay, so I'm going to continue to play through here. I'm going to do, I'm going to play through the rest of the first turn. So the second action stage and the third action stage, which by the time we get there won't have very many units activating. It's mostly going to be these final sort of ship movements over here. This sub may be joining the fray, and the air units seeing where they can have any opportunity to hurt the enemy. But really, it's going to be a lot of these a lot of these NATO air units busting these guys up. I mean, that's basically what's going to happen. Even this guy way down here, he can go out 16 hexes. So you figure 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and he can fly home. So that's kind of the rub here, that even the furthest away air unit for NATO can currently mess with these guys, and honestly, like, their range covers this whole region. So it's going to be a near run thing for the Soviet subs if they're going to win. This is almost assuredly going to be a NATO victory by the end of it, anyway. Okay, here we are functionally at the end of turn one, and the Warsaw Pact technically has lost the scenario, even though, we could keep playing, but there's no way for the Warsaw Pact to continue. Now, we've burned a crap ton of supply doing it, but I now have, so my planes, we started here, first sortie, second sortie, third sortie for NATO, is how these guys are currently, set up. Well, they've been running missions out to the North Sea, up here, and managed to indeed find and destroy the one SSBN subunit that had the movement allowance necessary to get into the West Atlantic Sea area. The remaining one, which has 2 hits on it already, can't make it there. I've tried to figure it out. I'm like, is there any way? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's turn 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, you guys can't see that. There's no way. Every way that I could move these guys, right? If you're moving 6 hexes for 4 turns, 24 hexes, I can't figure out a way to get over here with this unit. Now, which means we literally can't win. There's no way to get an SSBN unit there. Now, what I could do is I could say, well, for fun, let's pretend like this unit has 70 movement allowance or something, or we're going to give them an extra hex or 2 for fun to try to keep the game alive. And I might try to do that here going into turn 2. So let's just pretend for a second that that's the case. Well, these guys are going to become undetected because we lost their position. These guys are all going to get, their sorties back, which I will say we did destroy, we did manage to knock out a NATO sub with our air. on the second action stage, but that wasn't much of a killer here. So if these guys are all kind of coming back, we've got enough supply on the NATO side to basically run, a couple different action stages, or basically three strike missions. So our air, though, has been very clutch, is going to start to run out of capability. And it makes me wonder, if you had rolled worse detection maybe in this scenario, um, or you're playing the shell game and you're just not finding the right subs, that you could burn through a lot of supply like I did, maybe not achieve this result in finding the submarine target of choice here, and then run out of supply, and then it really is up to the naval forces to try to find that sub. So I won't say it's impossible for the Warsaw Pact to win, but in this case, we just were able to detect well enough that we could find them, and we got them, and we rolled reasonably well to destroy the enemy subs. And at this point, it's looking worse and worse all the time, for uh, for these guys. So yeah, I'm going to go into turn two, and I'm going to play through probably all of turn two, so that you guys understand. Like, there's not much to this at this point. Now it's just, can we detect the subs and can we destroy the subs? The last SSBN has 2 hits on it already. It has a hit capacity of 4. This SSGN that's with it has one more hit before it's destroyed, and then there's this guy, and really none of them, the rules say SSBN, so it's not like an SSN or an SSGN sub counts for victory. It really has to specifically be an SSBN. So it would really come down to, do we see any other uh, impacts to all this? Now, if we go into that first action stage, just by the by, right? How many guys can we move? We roll the dice. NATO only gets 1. The Warsaw Pact gets 4. No, I'm sorry, 5. So they can kind of move a lot. Would we bother flying these guys anymore? There's really not much in the way of NATO subs in range that they could get to. Maybe this guy, if they really got out there. Could we do it in 24 hexes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, we could, I guess. So we could, if I spend the supply, I try to make it happen. We do detect them, and assume that, somehow we've stayed out of range of other detection. I'm like on fast forward mode now, guys. Well, if we had done that and we try to hit him, we do hit. We're going to do 1 hit. And does he dodge ECM? He does. By 2, he still takes a hit. So we'd hit him. And we can't make it with this other guy. And we could probably get him with this guy. Try to roll to hit. Miss. So he's done. And then for the naval moves, right? Like, we would go basically, 1, 2, 3. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No use trying to do a wideband. There's just no point. Um, and, maybe we would try. Let's see, can this guy even do anything? Anti-ship? Yeah, he could. Runs up into here. Do we detect each other? Um, we failed to detect the NATO unit, but the NATO unit um, fails. Okay, so we're failing to detect each other, and I don't know. He's going to run interference out here, maybe. Uh, and then maybe there'd be a fight down here where these guys stayed in the same hex, and we'd have a sub combat that's probably going to go NATO's way, almost assuredly. And well, this guy's going to take 2 hits, and firing back, he misses. So it's kind of, these guys are all kind of locked up with each other. They're winning that one. And if we went back to the NATO moves, right now, again, this is like, okay, we're going to spend some some supply. We're going to come over here. We're going to try to detect. This guy actually fails to detect. We'd run a different mission with this guy. Same deal. He detects. So these guys are revealed. He's firing on our buddy here. And so he would become detected for the moment. Yeah, 7. That's a hit. And though it's not a very good hit, this guy might actually be able to dodge it. And he does. So this guy is down. And we basically got one more air mission left, but this guy, he's going to fly up. He's going to do the same thing. He's going to fire. And let's see, that would have been, okay, failed. And so, yeah, he gets destroyed. So he's done. We're out of supply points as NATO, but there's no more, what's left on the board? Nothing that can achieve Warsaw Pact victory. So, even if we had given that other SSBN extra movement allowance, NATO here just squeaks out a victory, though they were running low on air supply at this point, to keep flying these patrol missions. So I guess, this is something maybe also to learn, that it can be mighty expensive for NATO, even though they have command and control of the seas here, generally speaking. They can burn off a lot of supply trying to find a sub if you're trying to use that sub to do nasty business. But yeah, okay, well that's it, guys. I don't know. That's E7? This is E7 we're on? Yeah, Red October. In this scenario, no matter what the defection situation might have been in the movie, in the book, in this case, this is hot, and the NATO patrol have successfully destroyed the subs. Yeah, they're down. So that's it, guys. That's E7. Now, I do think this is kind of an interesting little puzzle scenario. Again, maybe if some die rolls had been a bit better, and NATO used up its supply. What's left here? Well, we have some surface ships that don't have great surface capability, and would probably have some trouble successfully searching for these guys. We'd be down to relying on these last few surface ships and NATO subs to try to stop the Warsaw Pact subs from crossing the line. I think it's reasonable that, it's a gauntlet of die rolls, basically, and this whole scenario is a gauntlet of die rolls. And at any number of those die rolls, things can go south for the Soviets. If they were to maybe get lucky throughout that gauntlet, they could thread the needle. Um, in this case, the air just seems so strong in being able to detect. Now, it's only a 50% chance of detection, but if you have enough planes like we had here, you have enough chances that once a detection occurs, you can really pile on the engagement here, and that was really, what we ended up doing. So, all things considered, could have been worse. Could have been better. I don't know. We at least got to turn 2. If we cheated a little bit, but it does make me wonder, if the conditions of the scenario were to be changed a little bit, or we were given a different set of subs, set up differently, that more than one of our subs could actually achieve victory. The fact that we were basically just one sub was capable of doing it put a level of challenge on here that was really rough to get my head wrapped around. So, and, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, good lessons learned. The next scenario that we're going to be looking at is birds and wolves, which is another strategic map scenario with I think a lot more units. Yeah, boy howdy, 77 units. I'm not sure what to think of that. So I'm going to work up the map and the situation here for E8 in the next video. Sorry this one took so long to get out, guys. I had a lot of life stuff going on, and I actually recorded the first parts of this video um, weeks before the final clip here. So this video is a several weeks in the making. Hopefully the next couple will not be such a long wait. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Keep gaming. We'll see you in the next one.